Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to my Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Thank you. I have your permission to record and upload this.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Welcome to the party, pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 138. I have Juan Doe with me. He prefers to go by that name, but he is the founder of La Derecha Diario. That is a newspaper in Argentina who has been covering Javier Milei quite a bit. Looks like it's one of the larger newspapers on that side of the political spectrum down there. He knows Javier Milei. He's been covering the campaign, and he's going to talk to us about what's been going on down there and what it looks like for Milei's presidency, which is he'll be inaugurated. Today's the 3rd of December, and he'll be inaugurated 1 week from today. How are you, Juan?
Hey, Chris. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm. You could call it the Right Wing Journal. The
Yes.
name of my newspaper. We found the newspaper even before Milei got into politics. We started in 2020,
Okay.
and Milei started in 2021. But we become the biggest newspaper in this part of the political spectrum, no doubt. And yeah, we've got a massive following, and I'm very happy about it. I'm very surprised. I was never so optimistic. I never thought this was going to happen, and now we even have the president elect. So we're very happy.
Yeah. The one paper that I'm most familiar with down there is the Pan Am Post. How would you compare to the Pan Am Post?
The Pan Am Post is more regional. They are not from They're not from Argentina. I think the founder is I don't know if Venezuelan or
they're all of South America. But yeah, that's the one publication I'm familiar with down there. That's
I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good friends with them. They're great, but they focus more on regional international politics. We focus more on Argentina or an economy. And those kinds of
okay. I just wondered. Yeah, so we've got some good people out there, and of course I know the Pan Am Post puts out some English content as well. But okay. Well, How did you get into all this? How did you become a liberty activist? How did you become a liberty journalist?
Yeah, it was the most random thing ever. I am an engineer. I study engineering in the university, but I was fed up. Before the pandemic, I was fed up of how the news media was organizing, how they were covering the news. I was involved in some way with 2 political campaigns back in 2019. One from José Luis Espert and one from Juan José Gómez Centurió. They were 2 right-wing candidates that they got less than 2% of the vote. But I saw how the media covered them back then, and I realized how much they lied, how much they produced fake news about them. So I with one of my closest friends, we said let's do this. Let's launch a newspaper and see what happens. We started very humble. We didn't even have a website. We were only on social media at the first, but people were asking us to have a website, and we opened a Patreon to ask people for money to launch the website, and it was a crazy amount of money that people donated, and we launched the website 1 month after, and we've been having the newspaper since then. It's going to be 4 years, I think, on February next year.
Yeah, doesn't this sound exactly like America? We're complaining that all the journalists are on one side and they don't give fair coverage to the other side. It just sounds so familiar, and of course and it sounds like to me they've really been against Milei for a while. Is that fair?
Yeah, they hate him.
Yeah. Well, some of them hate him. I know, for example, he's got a friend in a gentleman named Alberto Fantino. Did I get that name right?
Alejandro Fantino. He's a journalist. He's has gone more independent. He was very mainstream back in the day. Now he's gone more independent, and he's more free to talk about Milei.
Yeah, and because I bring him up because that was Milei's first television appearance, and the ratings went up, and then so everybody was saying, okay, keep bringing this guy back. He gets ratings.
Exactly. exactly.
and
That's exactly what
it
happened.
worked. And that was in 2016 or 2015, I believe.
16, 17. Yeah,
Yeah.
around that time.
I need to see if there's a video of him in that with that first television appearance. It'd be very
Yeah,
interesting.
I can get
Yeah,
that for
send
you.
that my
It
way.
was it's
Yeah.
pretty famous. Yeah.
Hopefully, I can read the captions and all that stuff. Yeah, but
Yeah.
this is something too. This is something I've noticed about Milei though. He built his brand before he got into politics. So
Yeah.
he got out there. He got popular, got followers on Twitter before he even ran. And he ran in 2020 and he ran in 2021. That's a so he actually so interesting too. He actually it hit strictly speaking, their 4-year terms. He's going to have to resign from that position in the legislature, and or maybe they elect her, and then somebody else will have to take over that. But yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, he already had some notoriety before he went into politics, but then he went into politics and
Yeah.
then built on
He
that notoriety. And I've heard also that attempts to censor him was part of what moved him into politics. Is that correct?
Yeah, basically he was a professor in the university. He taught economics, and he was fed up with very similar to my case. He was fed up with how the media treated some economic issues. He's very libertarian, very Austrian economics on the Austrian economic side. So he went he asked television some friends he had in the media to invite him because he wanted to give his take on the economic crisis that Argentina was going through back then. We're still in crisis, but back then we had some issues. Some got resolved, some didn't. And he got very famous. He is a great communicator, and people were in love with him in the minute he started talking because he has the way of explaining very difficult concepts in a way that it's not only easy for the spectator to understand, but also it's very easy for them to repeat. So he produces these catchphrases that a lot of his followers can repeat easily and spread his message. For example, when he talks about inflation, he says that inflation is in every place and a monetary phenomenon. And that is something that maybe in the US everyone knows, but here in Argentina, the two ruling parties they always say that the inflation is the fault of the businesses, right? They say that the businesses jack up prices because they want to, and that's why inflation happens. And that's not why inflation happens. Inflation happens because the central banks print more money than they should. So that's something that a lot of people were saying, but Milei had the way of saying it that really got into people's minds and changed how they saw the situation.
Yeah, and that's. I mean, most people probably couldn't. They don't really define inflation, but they know what it looks like.
Yeah, exactly.
That hamburger that cost 10 pesos last week costs 15 pesos now, and it's a
Yeah.
yeah it it's yeah so, and they know and that's something everybody I think they can agree on pretty much don't like it when that happens, although everything else goes up too. And and the ability that is a very rare talent that very few economists have, the ability to talk to people on the street. They're great economists, but and they can talk among themselves. They can talk to the other guys, other college professors. But going out on the street and talking to the
Yeah.
people is
Yeah.
a very good skill. And not to mention though, also he also has the skill of being able to talk about it in a way that just doesn't bore people to death. You know, yeah, and I think this probably helps that he was, both in a Rolling Stone cover band and an athlete.
Yeah, yeah. For the people that don't know, he started when he was in school. He had a rock and roll band where
Yeah,
he covered the Rolling Stones. Then he got
yeah,
into football, or soccer, however you want you want to say it.
yeah,
He was a goalkeeper. He
yes,
was very good at it. He even got into the first division of a club here in Argentina,
dude.
and when the thing that changed his life. This is something that he talks a lot is we had a hyperinflation in '89. We had a very left wing president, the first after a decade long dictatorship. And he was like, people were very hopeful of this new democratic phase of the country, democratic era of the country. But the president was very good in those terms, in democratic inclusion, but was horrible in the economy, and the economy completely crashed. We had the worst hyperinflation we've ever had. And Milei, he was a goalkeeper back then, and he started realizing that he should get into economy. He should start studying economy, because economy was something that if it was badly handled, it could destroy your life. Even if you were successful on what you did, even if you had a good job and anything, if your country goes into hyperinflation, you're destroyed. So he got into economics. He studied a lot. He's very smart. He's a brilliant person. So he went from sports to economy, and he graduated with honors. He was first of his class. Then he did a master's degree. He got like 2 or 3 master's degrees. He's very knowledgeable. He's very academic, and he devoted his entire life to that. And during the pandemic, he realized that it was not enough to being a communicator. You also needed to get into the meat of the politics. And so he resigned his job. He got into politics full time, and he got elected as a congressman in 2021. He got in third place here in the capital of the country, but he got a historic 20% in the capital of the country that is very left leaning, more progressive than left leaning. It's not like socialism. It's more like it's very hard on progressivism here in the capital. So the 20% that he got here in the capital, it was
Yeah.
huge. It's like a Republican getting like a lot of votes in California, right, in San Francisco or something like that. So that was amazing. He got into Congress, and he also got elected Victoria Villarreal, who is now her vice president elect. So
Yes.
both of them got into Congress with the same party, and they formed like a small party with 2 congressmen. And after that, he immediately started his campaign for president. He said that his election for Congress was only a vehicle to the presidency. He realized that being a congressman, a two congressman party, it was not going to change anything. So he immediately launched his presidential campaign, and 2 years afterwards, he's now he's now president, which is really amazing.
Yeah, it's really been a rise. I'd love, for example, to see if there's a way to look this up of his maybe his Twitter account, Twitter follower account, because I know it was maybe 2 or 3 months ago he went over 1 million, and now he's almost pushing 2 million. I don't know if there's a way to look that up, but I'll have to see if we can
Yeah, yeah,
see how many
you're
Twitter
right.
followers he
Yes,
has.
you're
Yeah,
right. He's almost 2 million. You're right about that. I haven't noticed. Basically, he has a lot of social media presence. He's
yeah,
he has something that I've not seen with any other politician. That he comments on your tweets. Like if you talk with him, if you post a tweet and you include him, you tag him, he will probably, I don't know right now, but during the campaign he was going to respond to you, and that was pretty amazing for someone to do that. And
yeah.
yeah, he has a massive social media following. Yeah,
And now he can't possibly respond to everybody anymore. There's just no way because he's getting so many tweets.
yeah. He also
Yeah,
retweets a lot. Everything that he sees, he retweets.
yeah,
He has retweeted a lot of our articles about him in the newspaper. I never asked him to retweet them. He just goes goes in there and retweets him by himself. It's pretty amazing.
yeah. I will probably have a heart attack if he retweets me, but oh well. Yeah, it's and an interesting thing too. It's his inauguration day will be the 40th anniversary of Raul Alfonso's inauguration, because that was also on December 10th,
Exactly, exactly.
1983.
Yes.
Is that was he the one responsible for some of that inflation back then, or was that
Yeah.
I've also heard about Menem.
No, no, Menem.
Talk about him.
Yeah, that's a very good question. That's something that people that Milei was took care of debunking, because
Yeah,
what happened is that Alfonsín had a minister of economy that was very left leaning. He was not he as a president, he was not as left leaning as his Minister of Economy. He was completely left leaning. He put the central bank in a position that they printed all the money they needed. They never took into account that the inflation was something that could happen. So if any budget that they need to expand, they expanded without thinking. They just printed the money as if it had no secondary effect. And they provoked the biggest hyperinflation we've ever had, and that was in '89, right? But they started
Yes.
printing money 2 years before or 3 years before in '86, and they tried to stabilize the economy by printing more money, and they got into into this loop of they needed to print money to pay for wages for the for or to keep prices down, like to subsidize prices. So they printed more money to, and that was a nuclear bomb, and it exploded during the election, during the election year on the '89. He was not a candidate. He did not seek re-election. He couldn't seek re-election because we didn't have re-election back then. We only have one
Yeah.
term elections. But
Yeah.
he's
It was six terms, but they could only serve once. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But he didn't even involve himself in the campaign because the country was completely destroyed in the economic terms. So he actually talked with Menem, and he gave the control of the country before he should have done it. Right? They had like a pact in which he was still president, but the country was the administration of Menem started some months before. So that was why many people talk about hyperinflation and they say Menem, but no, Menem, he got the control of the country when the country was in the brink of the collapse, and he
Yeah.
implemented the stabilization plan that is the ley de convertibilidad, the one to one, $1 to $1, and that completely destroyed inflation. 2 years later, we had 0% inflation.
Yeah. I should correct. The term was 6 years. Yeah. And yeah, you know, this is one possible problem Milei could have is you implement the policies, but sometimes the people don't see the benefits of the policies until maybe a year or two later. What can Milei do about that? Because I mean, really, it's Milei's going to need 8 years to fix all this, and he's probably going to need to pick a successor to keep fixing all this.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, what can he do? But what can he do in the very short term that at least people will at least be able to say, well, I'm better off than I was 4 years ago.
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, right? So he has a plan. He has an economic plan that he even read it before he got into politics. He wrote many books, and he explained
Yeah,
this plan in all his books. He has a 35-year plan in which the country would go through three generation
yeah,
reforms. Each generational reform getting closer to what a free market economy would look like.
yeah,
But his short-term plan it's a very what we call it shock plan. Is we do all the reforms that can be done in the quickly. We do it in the shortest time possible. So that would include uh, um, labor reform, because we had a big issue here in Argentina that we have these trade unions that they make very difficult to hire people because you cannot fire them later. So we need to have a reform to have that in line with the rest of the countries in the world, because this is I think we're the only country in the world where you cannot fire people. And then he wants to do a monetary reform in which he will start by putting a model very similar to what Menem did at the first time of his presidency,
yeah,
like a convertibilidad. But the problem of Menem was that he put that convertibilidad for 10 years, and you cannot have that kind of economic measures for 10 years. It's not sustainable. So Milei's plan is to have that economic measure for a short period of time, for like 6 months or a year, and then dollarize the economy. And once you dollarize the economy, you take out the biggest issue that the country has, that is that the politicians print money to do politics, right? So once
yeah,
you take that power off the politicians, it will be much more difficult to go into this cycle of crisis.
yeah,
And then, well, the last reform that he wants to do in the short term is to close the central bank. and liberate the different economies, the different markets. Because what happens here in Argentina is that the central bank is not only a central bank in the way that other countries have it, but here in Argentina the central bank is it's also like the big they expropriate, they nationalize all dollars in the country, right? So if you want to export, if you want to export and another company in abroad gives you dollars for those exports, you don't receive those dollars. The central bank receives those dollars, and the central bank prints pesos to give to you for an exchange rate, right? And they control that exchange rate. So they have different exchange rates for each different industry. So if you export, I don't know, if you export soybeans, for example, or if you export meat, you get one exchange rate, and the central bank gets all those dollars that you export. If you export like services, for example, you have another exchange rate, and this creates a lot of what Milei calls inconsistencies in the pricing system that end up destroying the incentives of the economy. So
Yeah.
you got someone in like in the service industry getting much more money in their salaries than someone in the rural in the agro in the industry of exporting commodities. And that's something that it's completely crazy, right? So that will take to a quick stabilization of that part of the economy. But in the long run, there are a lot of more changes that he proposed, right? So
Oh yeah.
he wants to introduce vouchers for education and health. He wants to completely slash the budget. He wants to have superávit,
Yeah.
like destroying the deficits. So he has a lot of reforms he needs to do. He needs to cut a lot of regulation. We're one of the countries with most
Yeah.
regulations in the world, so he has a lot of work to do. Has a lot of work to do, but I think the first 3 months will be crucial. So in those 3 months, everything that he can go through, because we had another president in the past. He was called Mauricio Macri,
Yeah.
and he tried to do this, but in a gradual way. What is a gradual way? He want like one reform by each year, right? So first he tried to solve the monetary crisis, then he went into the into the into other. He started presenting reforms, but one by a year, and the country was not ready for that, right? So you need to have everything at the same time, and then you have 4 years to see what happens.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And of course, Mauricio Macri endorsed Milei, but
Yeah.
Mauricio Macri also, lost after one term to Alberto Fernandez, who of course is the outgoing president. And I don't know, and it's interesting because Fernandez didn't even try to run. Uh,
No, he was such
yeah,
a he was so he had the well Macri he ran for the re-election but lost, and it was actually the first time that president lost re-election in the history of our country. And then and people from Alberto Fernandez side, they mock Macri for that. They told him you lost for the first time a re-election in the history of the country. But then Alberto Fernandez, he didn't even go for the re-election bid, right? So that's even worse. So we had two presidencies that were awful in every sense of the word. Macri, he tried to do the reforms, did it very slowly, and they failed. And Alberto Fernandez tried to do left left wing reforms, and he also failed. So we had like 8 years of non government, and that has destroyed the country.
yeah. So really, yeah, and yeah, and Macri maybe ended up making things worse off. But anyway, but Macri's is Macri going to have a part of his Milei's current government or not?
Well, that's something that they're struggling right now. So that's something that is ongoing right now. Um, who is going to be part of the country of the
Yeah.
government? Sorry, is Patricia Bullrich. He was actually the candidate
Yep.
for Macri's party, but now Bullrich he has like her own sector in the party, right? She does not respond directly to Macri. She was responding to Macri at first place, but now like she has gone on her own way, and she's now the like another important leader of that party, and she's going to be the like homeland security the equivalent of Homeland Security here in Argentina. That is the Ministro de
Yes.
Seguridad, and she was one of the most right wing employees of Macri's original government, but uh, she had a lot of controversies also. So I don't know. I don't know if those controversies will drag
Yeah.
into into Milei's government. I hope not. But that's like the only big um, secretary that or department that was given to Macri's party. But the rest of the government, it looks like it will be very much a Milei government.
Well, Bullrich, of course, was part of the Monteneros, so she had her brief terrorist career. In fact, she was even out of the country for those reasons.
No,
You
yes,
know,
yes.
yeah,
She was
yeah,
she went through all the possible ideologies you could have.
yeah,
She went from extreme left wing guerrilla Montonera, and now she's one of the most libertarian
yeah,
or conservative
right,
candidates
yeah.
we have. Yeah.
It's kind of it kind of makes me wonder how much you can trust her. She seems to be a, a serial alliance builder. She goes from one group, is it just based on whoever her boyfriend or husband is at the time, or what? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. No, let's be honest, right? So she was very young when she was a guerrilla terrorist, and she was very much influenced by her boyfriend back then.
yeah,
And after the military dictatorship went down and we had a democracy, she got into the Peronist party, the PJ,
yeah,
and she got into the right wing part of the PJ, right? So like when once she was free of that influence, she got her ideas corrected. But yeah, she's not very much trustworthy. Yeah, yeah.
maybe there's some people like that. You don't like what they're thinking, just wait 5 minutes. But maybe she, and maybe if if she might actually be in on this if you really does believe. See, boy, this really does work for my country. Maybe
Yeah,
I should.
yeah. I think that with the Homeland Security
Yeah,
department, she's going to she always had this in mind. She's very much against insecurity. She fights narcotráfico. She fights drug lords. She fights crime. She was relatively good at it during her
yeah,
first tenure. Let's hope she's even more. The main criticism back then was that many things that she wanted to do, Macri told her not to do it. Right? That's what
yeah.
that was the thing back then. So let's hope that now she no longer has that excuse and she can do everything that she promised she was going to do.
Yeah, and from what I hear, also there's also been a very serious problem with teen crime down there. And they're
Yeah,
just getting off because they're
yeah,
so young. I don't know
yeah.
because they were
No,
talking. Bullrich was actually talking about lowering the age for which you could be
yeah.
prosecuted as
I,
adults or
I,
something like that.
I don't know how is it in the US.
Yeah,
You can maybe tell me, but here, if you are under 18 years old,
yeah,
you can. It's impossible to get you in jail. Like
yeah,
there are ways to do it, but it's almost impossible. Yeah.
yeah. There's a system for under 18 here. Sometimes it gets waived. It's really kind of it kind of also depends on just how much money you have. You
Okay.
can buy you can definitely buy your way out of jail in America, unfortunately, but
Yeah.
or your parents will buy your way out of jail. But yeah,
No, here
not
what happens what
yeah,
happens here is that they send their kids to steal because they
yeah,
know that they will not go to jail. So from I don't know 14 to 18 years old, parents send their kids to steal, and that's I think one of the biggest one of the biggest things to resolve in security in the security matters. It's really heartbreaking to see that kind of situation.
and it sets kids on a bad path. Although I know some
Yeah.
cases also, some places they also have programs for these barely legal criminals, and they send them to like a boot camp, and they really come out, but that it actually does reform them, and they don't go back to the life of
Well,
crime that they had before.
we have that
But,
here in
yeah,
Argentina, but they cannot be held against their will.
Yeah.
So they are sent there, but if they want to leave, they can leave and they will leave. So it's there, but it's not working, right?
Yeah. Okay. So yes. Anything you want to tell me about Diana Mondino or Victoria Vita Ruel or
Oh,
any of the other
Diana,
people in Milei's cabinet?
yeah, yeah. Diana is great. Diana is great. I have talked with her in the past. She's very good.
Yeah.
She's very good. She was actually the first candidate for Congress, but she always said during the campaign that if Milei won, she was going to take the it would be like the Secretary of State in the
Yes.
U.S. And she immediately started
Yeah.
working on that. She has a lot of contacts with other important presidents. She's like one of the most important. Milei will have a very small cabinet, but each secretary or ministro, how we call it here, it will be very powerful in their own subject, right? So Diana Mondino, she will
Yeah.
have all the power on on foreign relations. Um, for example, Patricia
Yeah.
Burrich, as we were talking about, she will have complete power over Homeland Security. So he will have very few secretaries, but they will be very powerful on their respective area.
Yeah. And I know she's fully fluent in English. Deanna, yes, you're invited on this show. But yeah.
It's going to
So
be
yeah.
difficult.
Yeah. She's got to be super busy. But that's also good. You want if somebody's dealing with all that foreign relations. You want somebody who has probably as many languages as they can get. But
Well,
if you, yeah,
our current Secretary of State, he cannot speak English. He cannot speak any other language other than Spanish. It's
yeah,
really here in Argentina. We always have the custom of the president talking only Spanish. But
yeah.
come on, the Secretary of State should speak other
Well,
languages.
yeah. Well, if she's going to talk to other people, yeah, certainly.
Yeah,
What do you
yeah,
think the foreign relations are going to be like? I mean, Argentina doesn't really get involved in other in you know Americans were so American libertarians are so fed up with the American government sticking its nose into everybody's business. I mean,
yeah.
Argentina isn't doing all that. Isn't sticking its nose into other people's business all the time.
No,
I mean,
but that's something but that's by design, right? So after
yeah,
we had a military dictatorship from 76 to 83, and after that most governments implemented a policy of dismantling our armed forces, right? So all of
yeah,
our armed forces are severely under budget. They cannot do their jobs. Most of them
yeah,
we cannot even give food to our soldiers, which is it was something that Milei talked a lot about during the campaign, especially his vice president Victoria Villarroel, who is the son of an important military man here in Argentina, who was a
yeah,
hero in the Malvinas War. So
yes,
Milei and Villarroel, they have a lot of proposals on how to give the power that the armed forces should have according to the constitution. But we don't have that, like that part of the US that is like the policeman of the world. We don't intend to do that, of course. We are very far away from that. But we have a lot of disputes of territorial disputes with Chile and with the UK for Malvinas. So that is something
yes,
that should be taken into account in this government. We cannot protect our borders. That's a disgrace also. We have a completely open border on the north of our country,
yeah.
completely open. So we have a lot of things to do there. Yeah.
But do you have a lot of people coming into the country? You probably don't, considering the circumstances. But
No, no, we have a lot. We have
yeah,
a lot because what happens is that other countries like Paraguay or Bolivia,
yeah,
which are close to us, they
yeah,
have even worse economic conditions, right? So Paraguay has done a lot of free market reforms in the past, but they started like 10 years ago and they're still
yeah,
very developed. And Bolivia is like the most socialist country in the region other than Venezuela. So a lot of
yeah,
people from there come to Argentina. Even though the conditions here in Argentina are terrible, they prefer them. Besides what we have in Argentina is we have a lot of work. So anyone can come here and work in almost anything. But the problem we have is that we have extremely low wages. So we have something that I don't think any other country in the world has. That is that we have employed people that they work a 9 to 5, but they are poor, right? They have a steady
Yeah.
job, they have a steady income, maybe both husband and wife, and they're both poor. And that is something that you cannot have. That's like the worst case scenario for the
Yeah.
economy.
Yeah, because I had another guest who told me the only way to get rich in Argentina is to be a lawyer, a politician, or an accountant. And he said accountants make so much money because the tax system is so complicated, and you have to hire accountants to do your taxes.
Yeah, yeah. I would add. I will add another one that I think is the one that gives you the most money right now is work for a foreign company, right? So
Oh yeah,
you work based in Argentina, but
yeah,
you give services to a company abroad, and they pay you in US dollars. That is unfortunately because that's the worst because we don't have people working in the country. They are in the country, but they work abroad, and that destroys your economy also. You have a lot of people that are outside the formal employee market, and yeah, that destroys you. But that's the
well,
only way where you can gain some real money.
nowadays, it's also the digital nomad, or the person who
Yeah,
carries a laptop around and can do his job from anywhere,
yeah,
but gets paid, say maybe by an American company, or maybe a European company, and gets his salary, but then goes down to Argentina and can live like a king.
yeah,
Which
yeah,
maybe and one thing I've noticed is there is some resentment from those people, because sometimes they drive up the prices of real estate, or they drive up rents. But also, it seems to me the resentment comes from they don't really try to assimilate.
yeah.
Yeah,
That could be something about that. But
yeah,
there's also a lot of resentment to people who don't pay taxes. I, of course, as a
yeah,
libertarian, I encourage
yeah,
that. I encourage to not paying taxes or pay as little as possible. But there are a lot of, especially in the party that likely they lost the election, the
yeah,
current government. They are they so you have into consideration they said that they wanted to tackle inflation by raising
yeah,
taxes, which is completely crazy, right? So they wanted
yeah.
to battle inflation, raising taxes. It's incredible.
Well, they figured they'd raise taxes instead of print money, and the
Yeah,
whole thing about cutting spending is never off the table. And when they talk about cutting spending, the first thing they do is they always say we have to cut spending that's necessary. Or I'll give you an example. There was a story about the one of the some it was some group of the American military said we're going to cut, we got to cut spending. So the first thing is, okay, we're going to cut this defense system out.
yeah,
Meanwhile, they had this big band that was funded, and they said, well, they never thought of just cutting this marching band, even though you don't really need the marching band. It's like, yeah, it's so
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
it'd be like the president has a private jet, and they're going to say, well, we're going to cut these services if we have to cut budgets. But well, why don't you just cut the president's private jet? It's a
Well, yeah. That's a big discussion. I think
yeah,
for Argentina's case right now, the biggest budget cuts will come from two places. First
yeah,
place it will be the public companies. We have a lot of public companies. I know that this is something that
yeah,
maybe in the US you cannot even fathom, but we have
yeah,
most of our economy is in the hands of the state, or they have maybe they don't have the monopoly, but they have a part they have a company, a state company that competes
yeah,
against private companies in that same sector, which destroys the market, right? So that's the first place that Milei wants to cut budget. He wants to slash and privatize all of those companies. That would give you a lot of money. We also subsidize the other side of the economy. So we don't only have public companies, we also subsidize the private companies, because the private companies, they rightfully complain
yeah,
that they cannot compete against the state company. So the state,
yeah,
what it does, they give money to the private company, which is completely crazy, right?
yeah,
So he will also cut the subsidies, and then he has another project which will take more time, probably maybe a second term, but he wants to the provisional, I don't know how you say, the
yeah,
retirement plan here is completely in the hands of the state, right? So
yeah,
the government, he takes a little bit of your money every month, from your salary, and then when you turn 65, they start giving you your jubilación, your retirement. So, but that destroys people, because that money is used for the government, not to invest on a like a 401k like you have on the US. They use it to pay the salary of employees, or to pay for infrastructure. So they are not investing that money. So once the people need to retire, there's no money to give you, so they print it. So it's a system that is doomed to fail. So what Milei proposes is to actually reform that and move into a privatized system like we had before the current government, right? This was something that it was done 10 years ago by the current government, and it proved to be a complete failure.
Yeah, a complete failure. Yeah, what kind of privatization plan does he have? Because some of these privatization plans have worked, and some of them haven't worked so well. I mean, the ones I hear that work well is basically they give everybody in the country one share of the company. So, they might have, let's say, the Aerolíneas Argentinas, which is the airline.
Yeah.
If they say, okay, we're going to issue 45 million shares and every citizen gets one share. And then of course the citizens can sell their share at will, but that's
Right.
whereas
No,
some privatization plans have been auctioning things off, or like they'll sell it to somebody who's friends with the
yeah.
president, and
Yeah.
then they buy it for 1/10 of what it's worth. And
Yeah, that happened during the 90s here in Argentina. But
yeah,
the thing is, I prefer personally, I prefer that, even though it's not ideal, but I prefer that to keep having it in the government hands, and keep, because none of these companies make money, so they all lose money. So the treasury has to pay for those deficits for each of any one of those companies, of those government companies. So I prefer them to be sold, yeah, at pennies on the dollar, if you want, if you
yeah,
want to say, but just get them away from the government and put it on private hands. But another proposal from Milei, especially for Aerolíneas, which is a company that it has been completely destroyed by this government, and it's practically worthless. He wants to give it to the workers, right? So there's a big trade union in the Aerolíneas Argentinas, and what Milei said is, okay, don't boycott the privatization, because I'm going to give the company to you, right? So he will probably create something called la cooperativa, which is a company, that has a lot of stakeholders, private stakeholders, and all of them will be the current employees. So he will give it to them, and he will say, okay, thank you for your years of work in this company. Now you can take it to where you want to go. And if they crash it, and if they cannot bring it to break even, that's their problem, right? So they can sell it afterwards, they can do whatever they want, but the government will no longer subsidize or maintain that company. A different case is for example, YPF, which is the biggest company here in Argentina, and it's state control, and it's the oil company, like oil and gas.
yes,
And that company will probably be privatized, but not right away. It will probably take a while, because that company is very valuable, and it can be sold by a big value, by a big margin, but it needs to be stabilized. Right now it's losing money, even though we have the biggest shale oil reservoir in the world. We have Vaca Muerta, and we have a lot of oil rigs here in Argentina. We're one of the biggest producers in the world, and we need to import oil, because YPF is being badly managed. So we need to stabilize that company, and then we can sell it.
yeah, certainly you want to stabilize things. And yeah, oh yeah, certainly, yeah, yeah, that yeah, certainly got it. There's a lot of things, whether or not people want these. And of course, once they're privatized, it'll be interesting. Sometimes I wonder too if you might have a case where somebody just tries to destroy something before it's privatized.
Yeah,
Have you
yeah.
seen any? Have you seen any? Signs that the outgoing administration is working to make life difficult for Milei, or who else do you think could just make his presidency difficult?
Yeah,
The
probably the biggest thing is what we call piqueteros. These are like people from social movements, are usually linked to the trade unions. they usually go out on the streets. They're very violent and they
Yeah.
protest, and they completely lock down the, because we have something very particular in Argentina that I don't think any other country in the world
Yeah.
has. We have the political capital in the same place as the commercial capital and as the financial capital. It's like if you had San Francisco, New York, and Washington
Yeah.
D.C. all in the same place.
Well, yeah, yeah. A lot of these cities in South America, there's one very dominant city. I would say the same thing about Lima in Peru,
Yeah,
or Santiago in Chile,
yeah,
probably Montevideo in Uruguay. But there really isn't any. Colombia is more distributed that way, but there's really
yeah.
just one
Brazil.
dominant city where
Well,
that's the commercial center, the capital, and all this
yeah,
stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
it's the one airport hub.
yeah.
Yeah,
So Brazil had that issue, and they decided. I don't remember exactly what year they decided
yeah,
this, but they created a political capital called Brasilia. They
yes,
went ahead and they moved. They forcefully moved the capital away from Sao Paulo. So
yeah,
because what happened is they had the same issue we had. So
yeah,
everyone protest against the government, and they affect the normal work day of everyday people in the country. And it happened to me a lot of times. You need to go to your office. I don't want to swear, but you need to go to your office, and you cannot cross the street because there's a million people throwing rocks at the police and destroying the streets, and you cannot go to work, and that's crazy. So that is something that I think maybe in the future we need to do. We need to move the capital away, or maybe create something. What Milei's proposal is, he calls it a strong fist against these piqueteros. So if they
yes,
want to lock down the capital to protest, he will not allow it. He will send the police, and he will do what it needs to be done. But that brings another issues, right? So they usually, it it's really sad what they do. They send people to get hit by the police, and then they victimize, right? So they have a great communication strategy on that. They send people to the front to attack the policemen, and then when the policemen hit them back, they take a video of that, and they publish it in social media, and it's a great issue in the country. This happened a lot to Macri, and Macri gave the order to not attack the piqueteros, the protesters, and they ended up destroying the capital. There was a particular day where they, they were um, they were protesting against a retirement reform that Macri was presenting, and they completely destroyed the capital. They destroyed the streets, and they threw the I don't know how you say it, the thing on the floor. They destroyed the floors of the streets, and they threw it against the policemen, the stone, and it ended up being a huge thing that it was talked about for years
yeah,
to come after that. And now Milei's proposal is to not let that happen again. So he will
yeah,
send the police, and he will do what is necessary.
yeah. By the way, the capital of Brazil is not Sao Paulo; it was Rio de Janeiro.
Oh,
They
Rio de
moved.
Janeiro, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, they moved
Yes,
it to
yes, yes,
they moved it to Brasilia in 1960.
yes.
Although Brazil's all, they've always been, those. That's one thing. Yeah, Brazil has the two really big cities, but and then
Yeah,
the other cities. But yeah, but Brazil, of course, is just such a humongous country too compared to
yeah.
the rest of you. The big football rival. Yes, Brazil.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What's our most important thing to do? We got to beat Brazil on the football field. Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. Luckily, we've been beating them a lot lately.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And of course, you have a long border with them. So yeah, it's a.
Yeah,
That was one thing Milei's talked about. He's certainly made it known that he is not fond of Lula, but I mean,
no.
it's not like you can. It's not like Argentina's really just going to ignore Brazil. I mean, they've got to, they've got to let these businesses trade, right? I mean, they can't
Yeah,
just
yeah.
cut
I think
Brazil off.
what he said during the
Yeah,
campaign, he was more on tune with
yeah,
not signing diplomatic or political treaties. He was only going to sign economic treaties with Brazil because, of course,
yeah,
Milei is a proponent of free markets, full free
yeah,
markets. But he said, "I'm not." Our current government, they signed a lot of like. We call it entendimientos or memorandums that they talk like we are aligned, with some political issue, or we are aligned on abortion, and
Yeah.
they signed the treaty on that, and that's pretty stupid. And I
Yeah.
think Milei, what he was talking about is not doing that anymore. And well, Milei, he has a very good relationship with Bolsonaro. He has an extremely
Yeah.
good relationship with the son of Bolsonaro, Eduardo Bolsonaro. They met many times, and he has a good relationship with Jair Bolsonaro, who was president. So I think that relation with Lula is going to be a little bit difficult, but and also with China, right? So Milei was
Yeah.
extremely critical of China on how they use economy to destroy your country.
Yeah.
They well, we have a lot of issues with China. We even have a military base, a China
Yeah.
military base here in the Patagonia,
Yeah.
and we have ships stealing our seas. So and they steal all of our fish. So it's pretty
Oh,
crazy. Yeah, it's pretty crazy the situation with China. We also have what is called the swap chino, that is like a big a lot of people talk about the IMF
yeah.
debt, but we also have a big debt with China called the swap. That basically they gave us a lot of yuanes, their
Yeah.
currency, and they told us you can use them. It's on standby, right? You can use it whenever you want, but the debt is there. The debt has
Yeah.
been taken, so
Well,
that's another big issue we have.
yeah. Well, Milei, China. There is no country in the history of the world that has a worse history of human rights abuses than China. I mean, really, it's
I
awful. But
completely agree. Yeah,
I mean, they even got Russia beat, but
yeah.
and some other, that just reminded me though. What I hear talk about these lakes or what's that
Oh
about?
yeah, yeah,
Because I know
yeah,
I know
yeah,
Milei wants to dollar. He wants to take the country to dollars, but
yeah.
obviously this can't be done immediately, and if it's done in the wrong way, it could be have very bad results.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about
Yeah.
that. It's called letras de liquidez. It's abbreviated as LELIX.
How do you
So
spell that for everybody out there?
it's spelled like LELIQ. So it's le from letras de liquidez, and then the
Yes.
the liq, like liquidity letters or liquidity
Yeah,
bonds.
liquid letters. Yeah, so it's this rare word that has a Q but doesn't have a U afterwards, which is almost always the case in
Right. You can pronounce it as a K, but yeah.
Hellenic.
So
Yeah.
so basically, what this is something that has almost 20 years in the making. Nestor Kirchner, who is the founder of Kirchnerism, he was
Yes.
president from 2003 to '07, and basically he had a policy that destroyed this country. That basically all the dollars that got into the country, he printed money, he printed pesos to buy them. So he was buying dollars to to every company that brought dollars to the country, and he gave you a
Yeah.
pretty good exchange rate. So you wanted to sell those dollars to him, right? But he was
Yeah.
printing all that money. So with that money, all those pesos created a hyperinflation bomb. And the only way that Nestor Kirchner resolved on doing that, he created this. They were first called levacs, that were like central bank bonds that
Yeah.
they sold to the market, and they retire money from the economy. So if you have a lot of pesos in the economy, they will only produce inflation if they are in the hands of the people, right? If they are
Yeah.
circulating. So once they stop circulating, because the central bank takes them from the economy, and they put it on a vault, they no longer generate inflation. So these levacs and then lelics, they were something that the central bank did to take money out of the economy. So they printed money to pay for the budget, and then they sold these lelics to take the money away. So this created like a cycle of inflation, that is also one of the big components of inflation in Argentina. And the thing is that once you rely on all of the banks and all of the companies that buy these lelics to keep on buying them. So every month they need, or every week, depends on the type of lelic that you're buying, you need to renovate it. So every month you renovate that money, and you don't take it. You leave it on the central bank, and the central bank pays you an interest for leaving that money there, right? So that all that big amount of money, it's 4 times the money that is circulating right now. It's on a vault on the central bank, and we're praying that people keep on renovating. If they don't renovate it, all that money goes into the economy, and our monetary base quadruples in a day, and we'll have a hyperinflation by the night, right? So that is the biggest issue that Milei needs to solve in the monetary sense before he dollarizes. His plan is very controversial here in Argentina, but I think he's going to put he has all the tools to pull it off. He might take some money, he might take a little bit more debt, and he will also start selling a lot of these. He will start selling a lot of different funds that the government has, and he was going to raise a lot of dollars, and with those dollars he's going to disarm this bomb that the Kirchnerism is leaving, called the leaks. Right, he's going to rescue all those pesos with dollars, and he's going to completely deactivate it. And once that one is deactivated, he can dollarize the money that is circulating on the economy, because the money that is circulating, it's a lot, and it's generating 150% inflation, but actually the amount of money that has been printed is 4 times that. So you really need to solve that LELIC problem before you can even tackle the inflation.
Yeah,
I hope
certainly.
you I hope you understood my explanation. It's a very difficult concept, and I think the only politician in Argentina who understands this clearly and has a plan to tackle it is Milei, and I think that's one of the biggest reasons he won, because all the other politicians and candidates, they were not even talking about this, and it's a
Yeah.
real big issue.
Yeah, it's funny. The worst politicians always create the worst messes, and they're the hardest ones to clean up.
Yeah,
But this is why he's been meeting with people in America to try to maybe see if he can get something fixed there. Uh,
yeah,
you mentioned Bolsonaro. What other people does he have good relations with? I mean, I've heard Nayib Bukele in El Salvador has invited him to come hang out. Of course,
yeah,
Bukele is very much made Bitcoin legal tender. I mean, I don't know.
yeah.
Uh, there were some interesting congratulatory notes. He got a note from the president of Armenia. I think Guillermo Lasso from Ecuador congratulated him, and some other people.
Yeah, Milei has a very good relationship with all these right
Yeah,
wing candidates, if you want to call it like that.
yeah,
But like he also got a big congratulation from Jose Antonio Cast, who is the biggest right wing leader in Chile.
yeah,
He also got he was also congratulated by Abascal, Santiago Abascal from Spain, from Vox. And I think a lot more candidate, for example, Meloni from Italy, the prime minister from Italy.
yeah,
So he got the congratulations from all that part of
yeah,
of politics, but he also got the congratulation, for example, from Macron, the
yeah,
French president, which was a little bit weird because Macron is a lot more left leaning than Milei,
yeah,
but he even got the congratulation from that part. Yeah,
yeah. There was a lot of people, and he got some congratulations. I think from well, actually, he got some. There was that letter also where they wrote some endorsements, and like there was Janine Áñez who was in
yeah,
Bolivia for
yeah.
a
Well,
while,
Agnes, yeah,
and
she was the
Vicente Fox from Mexico, and
yeah.
uh, I know he got congratulations from Maria Corina Machado, who is the leading opposition in Venezuela, although she she,
Exactly.
she can't leave the country. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, and there were some other, and of course he also got some. No, there were also some of these people who said no, like Petro in Colombia, and
Yeah.
and did you see the little Twitter exchange between Petro and Bukele?
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now say it with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Petro doesn't like him. Morales in Bolivia doesn't like him, and I don't think AMLO in Mexico really likes him. So it's so
No,
it's a,
and Maduro.
these these are
Maduro.
these are good people. Yeah, that guy. Who was that guy again? You said from Vox in Spain.
Santiago Abascal.
Yeah, how do you spell that?
Santiago Abascal. Abascal. So
Okay, okay.
he's the leader
Yeah, you
of
said
Vox.
Vox, which is Vox. Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
know he spoke to them.
that's the well.
Yeah,
Milei was really inspired by Vox. He even went to a gathering, to a rally they had last year, and he spoke at that event.
yeah,
Even being
yeah.
Argentinian,
Oh,
he spoke on a Spanish political
yeah.
event,
No.
and people were loving him. Yeah,
Well, one thing we've learned in America is that not all the people who say they're enemies of socialism are necessarily pro-capitalism,
Yeah.
but and that's important to remember. I think he knows that. You
Yeah.
know, the American libertarians are certainly talking about him, and this is, and I suppose this is probably in the last 3 months. I don't know how you measure your followers, but this is one thing. He's probably getting all kinds of followers around the world now. Everybody's talking about him.
Yeah, yeah, I've talked a lot. Well, I even talked with Roger Stone last week,
Yeah,
and he was in love with Millet.
Rogers. Yeah, Roger Stone is definitely not a libertarian. Though I got it. Yeah,
Well, I asked,
yeah,
I actually asked him in the
yeah,
interview, and he said he feels he says he's a libertarian, and I actually
yeah,
remember a documentary from him called "Get Me Roger Stone." I think
yeah,
it's like 10 years now, or
yeah.
6 or 8 years,
He's
where he said that he was a libertarian back
yeah.
then.
He's had some there. He's had a lot of legal issues. I don't know if he's been sued or
Yeah,
they.
yeah,
Sometimes they really. It's not that much different from South America. They just try to use the system to go after these people,
yeah.
and it's not real. Yeah, yeah. Roger Stone's an interesting. I have met him though. He's a very interesting person, and I do know. Yeah, and
So yeah, so actually that's a good point. Milei was also tried
but
to. They also he was being investigated
yeah,
by the government. They were accusing him of jacking up prices
yeah,
with his
yeah,
statements. So this is something that is completely stupid, right? It's not
yeah,
something that the justice should be prosecuting you for. But they were saying that his statements during the campaign were making the exchange rate from the dollar go up, and
yeah,
that was causing inflation. And that was literally what was presented in the justice system in a declaration by the president. So the current president Alberto Fernandez, he denounced Milei in the courts over this. And it's what
I,
I hope that well, now he's president, right? So they will not be able to prosecute it for this. But if he had lost, if Milei had lost, I,
yeah,
I I think they were going to prosecute him to the full extent.
yeah, and that's one thing they can't. You speaking of, isn't that going to happen with Christina Kirchner? I mean, now that she's going to be out of office, doesn't she
Yeah.
go to jail or something, or is she going to try to maybe get out of town, get out of the country?
So
That,
she has been she has been sentenced to six
yeah,
years, but she has sent it to the court of appeals. I don't know how
yeah,
you say it, but he has appealed to
yeah,
that sentence, so she's not going to go to jail while there's still this appeal process, and this
yeah,
appeal process might take like a year or two. And she can even appeal then to the Supreme Court,
yeah,
which is the Supreme Court hates Christina Kirchner, so she'll probably be sentenced again if she
yeah.
goes to the Supreme Court. But
Mhm.
yeah, she should go to prison, but she has done this appeal process, or she has allowed herself to not go to prison. She was sentenced to 6 years of prison and like 10 years or 12 years of not being able to run for office again.
Yeah, I would imagine. I would imagine some of these people would have some type of escape plan. I could
Yeah.
be wrong, but you'd think they would. Just I'm going to get arrested. I better leave. It's I don't know where she'd go. That's what one thing I've been speculating. I said, where do you think Alberto Fernandez is going to go? Maybe he'll go to Venezuela. Maybe he'll go to Cuba. Who knows? It's
No, Alberto Fernandez. He's actually going. He's going to Spain.
okay.
Which is pretty crazy. He's going to Spain. The current government in Spain is Pedro Sanchez, who is very left leaning, very very very
Yeah,
left leaning, and he's going there. And they are even saying right now, newspapers are saying that he's going to be a counselor to Pedro Sanchez. He's going to be like a special counselor to him. Yeah.
oh my goodness, these people keep failing and they keep getting hired.
Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
like the coach who keeps losing but never gets fired, and then when
Yeah.
he does get fired, somebody else hires him, but he just keeps losing. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't get it. It's so. I guess it really is about ideology. And that's one thing about ideology. One of the most important things I hear though is that Millet is really changing a lot of minds. I mean, people are going out and buying economics books and all this stuff. Is that true?
Yeah. 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 He has really made a movement here in Argentina. I think that he got 30% right in the first election
Yes.
of the year on the general election, and I think that that 30% of the population here in Argentina has very has gotten a lot of influence from his libertarian ideas, and I think that if you ask them, they will tell you they are libertarian, even if they don't understand
Yeah.
fully what they're saying, but they will tell you that they are libertarian, and they will repeat some of his catchphrases very very heartfully. Then he got like 56% on the runoff, and I don't think the 56% would call themselves libertarians, certainly not. But the 30% that voted for him on the primary and then on the general election, I'm pretty sure they are very very much aligned with his ideas. And even some of the polling that has been taking place in these last few days after the election, uh, most polls reveal that 30% of the country is really really in for the extreme reforms that Milei has in mind. So they're fully committed to those reforms, and I think that they want the whole package, right? They want
Yeah.
dollarization, they want vouchers, they want completely free
Yeah. Well,
commerce.
yeah. I mean, maybe we'll see the country, Mileism will replace Peronism, and we'll see all these little Mileis who are in their 20s and 30s come in
Yeah,
and take over.
yeah.
That's one. Yeah, and it's so funny because Espert didn't do any of these things. What do you think were the key differences between Jose Luis Espert and Millet?
Well, Espert, I know him very well. I was part of his campaign back in 2019.
Yeah,
I actually I resigned and left completely because he's very different from me, very very different. He does not have a clear political objective in his life. He's not someone that wants to reform the country completely. He just wants to to have like a normal country,
yeah,
but Milei wants to really really apply the libertarian agenda, right?
yeah.
And another thing from Expert, I this is a personal opinion I have from him, he's a sellout, right? Like if you put
Oh,
him a little bit more money, he's going to go to that place, and that's what happened. Actually, he was a candidate for senator this election for Juntos por el Cambio, Together for Change, Bullrich Party, and he lost the primary. He was a complete failure. He got only like 11% of the vote. He even lost the primary within his own part, his new party, right? So
yeah,
he was a complete failure, and I'm happy he's not part of this movement right now. He has a lot of knowledge. He's a very professional economist. He was one of the first ones to start talking about libertarianism in Argentina, or
yeah,
free market ideas, but he has completely sell out, and that is something I can I can
yeah.
assure you.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. We had a lot of people that we thought were solid in America in 2020 who completely sold out over this.
Yeah,
The panicdemic,
yeah, yeah.
the whole coronavirus stuff. Does Milei get elected without all this insanity around the coronavirus?
No, I think it was.
Yeah,
I actually believe that the lockdowns here in Argentina. I don't know if you know, but the lockdowns in Argentina were extremely extremely
yeah.
hard.
It
Uh,
sounds like it was even worse than Peru, which I didn't think was possible. Yeah,
the thing in Peru, I have friends there in Peru, and what
yeah,
they tell me is that people were very much compliant to those lockdowns in
yeah,
Peru. So people, the government told them to use masks, and even
yeah,
use like plastic mask over their heads, and they were willing to do it. They
yeah,
did not have the rebel they were not rebel enough to do it. But here in Argentina, people like liberty, and I can assure that even with left-leaning governments, people like
yeah,
liberty a lot in Argentina, and they were completely against the lockdown, completely against, and every polling said that the lockdown had 20% or less approval from the public, and the government kept on renewing the decree in which they announced the lockdown, and people were protesting on the streets. No one, I've never used the mask. I almost never use the mask here in only to go to the hospital once. I put on the mask, but people were hating the mask, and a lot of people were not complying to the lockdown, and you could see that on the people, and the people. I think a lot of persons, or of Argentinians, they saw the lockdown as a realization of the power of the state, and they realized that the state could destroy your life if they wanted. So if they wanted to leave you at your house, and you could lose your job, you could lose your life even, because
Yeah.
we had a lot of what we call excess death. There are deaths that could have been prevented if we were not on lockdown, like cardiac problems, or brain
Yeah.
problems, or even suicide problems. People who committed suicide because of the lockdown, those were counted as excess deaths that are
Yeah.
not related to the coronavirus, but they were the fault of the lockdown. And we
Yes.
had one of the biggest, the largest excess death on the world.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people said, no, this cannot go on. And
Yeah.
I think
Well,
a lot of people said Milei is the one that will prevent this from happening again in the future.
yeah. Well, there were a lot of things, like missed cancer examinations, things like
Hmm.
that,
Hmm.
or people not discovering cancer,
Yeah.
and I've also talked about people missing their Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, and going back and just engaging. Yeah, Peru is interesting because I mean that was the second country I've ever visited after Canada, but I've been told that there's still very much this Incan attitude of going back to the Incas, that you follow orders, because
Yeah.
Peru is
Yeah.
still very much influenced by the. I mean, while Argentina I believe, has almost a very small or very very small indigenous population, Peru is still very much battle between
Yeah. Yeah.
the
What happened?
indigenous and the descendants of Europeans.
Yeah, what happened in Argentina is that our indigenous people, they were killed off by the Mapuches, that were the indigenous people from Chile. So
Oh wow,
our indigenous people were killed off by their indigenous people, and the Mapuches moved
yes,
to the Patagonia, moved to Argentina, and we had two big campaigns by former presidents of this country in the 19th century, that they went to the Patagonia and they had a big war against the indigenous people because they did not want to integrate with the with
yeah,
the with the Argentine nation, and they were pretty much moved out of the country, and we
yeah,
recovered those lands. And I think that was a big part of our
yeah,
founding of our nation. But Peru did not have that. I have a very good friend that he's from Argentina, but he moved to Peru like 10 years ago. I think you could have a talk with him maybe in a future show,
yeah,
to talk about. He's a lot into politics. He knows a lot, and maybe he can tell you a lot about
yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah. It's a yeah, because Argentina was kind of really a union of some different I don't know, viceroyalties or something like that. It wasn't really one unified country until maybe that. I know there were some wars in the 1800s, but there really hasn't been a lot of really. I mean, through most of the 1900s, and I mean, with the exception of the Malvinas and maybe a few other things, South America was basically at peace.
Yeah, yeah, that's completely correct. So we had what we call the Virreinato del Río de la Plata, which got
Yes,
a lot of provinces from the central part of the country. It
yes,
included Paraguay and Uruguay, and even
yeah,
parts of Bolivia.
yeah,
And we got our independence war, and we declared the Argentine nation. But our founding fathers, they even created other countries, right? So they created Chile. San Martin is our founding father. He created Chile. He created Peru. So there were a lot of there was a big movement. It was not like the U.S., that it was
yeah,
a big war and the U.S. appeared. Here we had a long process of wars to create different
yeah.
countries, and they were all from Argentina. But Argentina was like the home base for all those independence wars, and I think that spirit continues a lot in here in Argentina.
Because some people said to me also, as Argentina goes, so goes the rest of South America. So, which this could be a good influence on the rest of South America. I know there was also that, and I know I've learned a little bit about Juan Bautista Alberti, who wrote the
Yeah,
Constitution, but also is
yeah,
very much influenced by the American founding. And
yeah,
and it looks like there was really a really great. I'm learning also that there's been a really great tradition of liberal thinking among Spanish speaking writers or thinkers, uh, that I wasn't really aware of. Juan de Mariana in Spain, and the Economic School of Salamanca and things like that. It's definitely
yeah.
something worth looking into more than I
Yeah,
have.
we really have a lot of libertarian thinkers. we do not call them libertarian. We call
Yeah.
them liberal, but I know the connotation
Yes.
that that word has in
Yeah.
English. But let's call them
Yeah.
libertarian. We
Yeah.
have Venegas Lynch, we had Alzogaray, we had Alberdi, we had a lot of important people
Yeah.
that they wrote a lot, but they never got into politics, right? So Alberdi, he wrote the constitution. He was one of the greatest proponents of free market economy in Argentina, but he never got into politics. And I think that that is
Yeah.
something that really that changed the course of our country in comparison with the United States. Because, for example, in the United States, Jefferson, he wrote the Constitution and he later was president. He was, I think, he was a
Well,
government employee and then he was president, right?
Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. He
Oh, the
had
declaration.
he
Oh,
had very little to do with the American Constitution, actually.
oh, okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. There were, although some of his friends were definitely involved with that. Yeah. It's a very, yeah. Yeah. James
Well, but
Madison.
yeah,
Yeah.
uh,
And I've heard about Alberto Benegas Lynch, also Jesus Huerta de Soto, and
yeah.
some other people who, some of Milei's teachers who would, yeah, it's really amazing. Yeah, we've definitely got some good people here, and apparently, apparently Ludwig von Mises did make a trip to South America to go teach. At least that's what I've heard back in the old days.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
He even
yeah, with
he came in. He came to Argentina.
yeah,
And even Hayek, we have a photo of Hayek here in Argentina. He was talking in the like if it was on Wall Street, right here from
yeah,
Argentina. And I know a lot of friends from my family. That, of
yeah,
course, they're very much older than me.
yeah,
That went there and they talked with him. So it was yeah. We have a big influence on that side. We also have a big influence of what that is represented with Peronism. That is
yeah,
a more left-leaning nationalist
yeah,
concept of politics.
yeah. We need to take back the word liberal here. I've sometimes said after Millet, I've thought maybe we could call it rock star liberalism or lion liberalism.
Yeah, yeah,
It's also interesting. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. The lion has kind of become the mascot of the liberty movement down there in Argentina. Our
yeah.
mascot here is the porcupine. I mean, maybe that's not the best. Maybe we need it. And the Russians use an eagle, so maybe we need a better mascot. I don't
Yeah,
know. I
that
don't
is
know if that
very.
makes a difference, but that's something we might
No,
think.
no, no.
You know,
I'm well. Well,
yeah,
I have a newspaper, so I
yeah,
think communication is key in any
yeah,
movement. I think
yeah.
symbolism is key in
Oh
any
yeah,
movement, and I think Milei managed to do a lot of that. For example, Milei he says that he's a libertarian, right? But
yeah,
it was not random, right? Even though he's really a libertarian, he has been talking about Austrian economics for a long time. He used that word because here we all the liberal presidents, well, liberal, like
yeah,
in our sense of the word that we had in the past, they were very they had a very negative opinion from the public, and they're called neoliberals. So Milei like distanced himself from those kind of politics by calling himself a libertarian, and I think that
yeah.
was very important on his side.
Yeah, it's very, yeah. Calling yourself a libertarian, I think it's really become more descriptive. Some Americans also like to use the term voluntarist. There's a lot of different terms, because especially if they're more non-political, because they said I'm not really politically active, but I'm just a voluntarist. There's a lot of different words.
Yeah,
I think there's so much that we can learn from this, because this is really the most successful by far that a politician has ever been. I mean,
yeah, yeah. But I want you to have into account that the Milei's movement is broader than just libertarians, right? So
yeah,
his vice president, Victoria Villarreal, she's
yeah,
a conservative in every sense of the word.
yeah,
She's like the traditional conservative, and
yeah,
and Milei also has a lot of influence from what we call the Partido Demócrata here in Argentina. That it's nothing to do with the Democratic Party in the U.S., but it's more like a traditional conservative line that it comes from even from another party that was called the Partido Autonomista that actually governed the country for a long period of time. But that kind of conservatism was a big part of the campaign also. But I think the biggest thing was like this rebel, this being a rebel against the political establishment. I think that was the biggest part of the campaign.
Yeah, it helps, and I hope it works out because there's certainly, but yeah, and definitely, the fact that things got so bad here. I don't think things. Most Americans don't really know what poverty looks like because if they've never left America, and
Yeah, I
I
agree.
don't know. I don't know if it ever will get bad enough. Whether we're lining up for gas or something like that. I mean, it's really hard to say. I mean, one thing. By the way, if Millet ever goes back to New York, he should try to look up a guy named Israel Kirzner. He got his PhD under Mises, under Ludwig von Mises. He also happens to be a rabbi. He's 93 years old now, but definitely a guy worth meeting.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, you can talk economics and talk, and he's also a rabbi. He's got a long, very, very nice guy too. Although it's been a long time since I've talked to him, but yeah, he's still there in New York.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that I've not talked about this with Milei, but I'm pretty sure if I told him about this, he's going to know who he is, because
Yeah,
Milei, he has a lot of knowledge of this,
yeah,
of figures of libertarianism.
yeah,
So yeah, I will definitely talk that with him if I ever talk with him again.
yeah, yeah. He
Yeah,
he was at New York University for a long time, and yeah, so and
right.
that was, of course, where Mises ended up, and there were a few people who learned under Mises who ended up at NYU. It's unfortunate that the city hall in New York City actually was removing statues of Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah,
The libertarians around the world, I don't think they know how messed up some things are here, and they really are messed up.
yeah,
I don't know how we're going to get it back, and I've really been paying a lot of attention to South America, maybe because I have more hope for you all down there than I do have here for my own country. I mean,
yeah,
I,
yeah.
I watched all three of Milei's debates, and then it just dawned on me. When was the last time I watched an American presidential debate that was outside of internal Libertarian Party debates? You know, I will say American libertarians, some of them do have a pretty positive opinion of Tucker Carlson. I think Tucker's somewhat sympathetic to us. He certainly talked to us and had good conversations with us, but uh, we don't really get much attention from what would be called the conservative media here. They're just so in bed with the red team or the Republican Party, and the Republican Party is just a lost cause.
Yeah, my opinion is that um, the Republican Party needs to fail a lot more
Yeah,
for the Libertarian Party to become something that is a viable option for the voter.
yeah,
You can be the best, you can have the best agenda possible as libertarians, but if the other party is better established and they are not failing as much as our conservative party was failing, I don't think there's going to be an option. And I think like uh, you need to combine libertarianism with being a rebel, right?
yeah,
With hating the government and hating the establishment, and realizing how the
yeah,
media works, and the industrial military complex works, and all that combined. I think
yeah,
today Trump is like the biggest figurehead for that, even if it's not completely aligned with that. But I think he's the figurehead of that, and as he has gone to the Republican Party, the voters will be there, unfortunately. But I think that Milei could have done that. He was in talks with people from Together for Change, Juntos por el Cambio, Bullrich Party. He was about to go into that party. He was very close to go into that party, but finally he decided to go with his own movement, right, with his own
yeah.
party. Yeah.
Yeah, and what it looks like it's a lot easier to start your own party and really have open elections down there.
Well,
We
actually,
don't really,
actually,
our elections are really very rigged up here in a lot of ways.
Well, let me tell you. Actually, it's very difficult to create your own party here in Argentina. It's almost impossible. In 2012,
Yeah,
the Kirchnerism, they signed a law that it's called the political party law, that
yeah,
makes it almost impossible to create a new party. But what Milei did, he did something different. He got a lot of established parties that were very small, that they had like less than 1% of the vote, and
yeah,
he got all of them to align with his candidacy, and they formed a political front this is something that is enshrined in our electoral system. Those parties can unite and create a front, and they can present a candidate,
Yes.
and they can present candidates for Congress within that front.
Yeah.
So that is what Milei did. I don't know if that's something possible in the U.S. I don't
Yeah.
think so, but yeah.
Yeah. You have these parties, and then you have the coalitions. I
Oh,
can tell you in the American and but for the American equivalent of a debate, for example, there is no way that Schiaretti and Bregman would have gotten equal time with the top three. Uh, you know,
right, right,
and
right.
I was watching those debates, and I was kind of thinking, why are they here? They really realistically they
Yeah,
can't win, but
yeah,
realistically they can't win, but they still were there. And I also noticed, it seemed like most of the debate that the top three candidates were just kind of going after each other.
yeah.
But although I have to admit, I like Schiaretti more than the other ones. But and
Yeah, me too. Me too. I was probably going to vote for Schiaretti if there was no other candidate
yeah,
like Milei, but he's like an old school Peronist.
yeah, oh yeah,
He's more like a center candidate.
yeah,
It reminds me a lot
yeah,
of like for example Mitt Romney or something like that in U.S.
yeah.
politics, like a very center candidate that nobody likes, but it has like common sense
Well, well,
proposals. But yeah,
well, Schiaretti was also the governor, and he had this attitude of I
yes,
hate I
yeah,
hate how Buenos Aires comes in and screws up my province, that
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of thing.
That's
Yeah, that was
and
where he
I
was, and I suppose Millet probably will decentralize a lot of things. I mean, authority that maybe the president maybe the governors will have more authority, and the president will have less authority. So that could lend itself to that.
Yeah, well, actually, I'm from Buenos Aires, and I completely
Yeah,
agree with Schiaretti. It's crazy how centralist this country is. We had a big confrontation in the past between federalists and centralists. That were those were the names of the parties, like the centralist party and the federalist party, and they even went to wars in between them. We had civil wars between them, and unfortunately, even though that the federalist won, the country got into a big centralist political system. And actually under Peron, he created a system where everything had to go through Buenos Aires, because he wanted to industrialize the country forcefully from the government, and he put all industries in Buenos Aires. So all people from every part of the country moved to Buenos Aires to work on those factories, and that created a lot of centralism.
yeah,
And that's a political system that continues to today. But I completely agree. We need to to have a more federalist type of system. And another thing we have something that is called coparticipación. That is something crazy, something completely crazy. That is that the provinces, instead of having their own taxes and raising money locally, they receive money from the central government. So the central government has some taxes that are to be distributed between the provinces. So they are raised nationally. So anywhere in the country you have to pay the central state. But then the state decides with his finger to which province that money goes, and that
yeah,
creates like we call it clientelismo. We call it like
yeah,
the provinces need to do a lot of lobby to get that money, so their senators vote in a way that it's not
yeah,
for the good of the country. And it's pretty crazy. That's something,
yeah,
and we cannot change that, because that was enshrined in the constitution, unfortunately, in one of
yeah.
the reforms, and we cannot change that. So that is something that we need to have into account, because we cannot change that, and that is something that we have to live with that.
Yeah, that's we're having that here too. Like what why is the federal government involved in paving a street in Rosario or something like that? The
Completely, I
people in
completely,
Rosario
yeah,
should be
yeah,
paying for that, and the people who
yeah,
and roads and stuff like that are especially because the people know the area, and you end up with these projects, and I definitely it
yeah,
definitely becomes more centralized. Yeah, uh, you know, uh, yeah, it's very I think this will be a very excellent. I think we're going to learn a lot here too, though. It's from what we can. One thing too is, do you know if there's any plan to get with it's all happening so fast, but Nile definitely needs to get some of those books translated into English.
Oh, that's a very good idea. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know if they are translated. I don't
you-
think they are. I know
I
that he has some books that are very
yeah
specific to
yeah
Argentina.
yeah
He has he has one called Otra vez Sopa that
yeah
basically talks about the political crisis of Argentina back then, back in the
yeah
2000s. But he has I think his best book, that is a book called Desmitificando el keynesianismo, o derribando el mito keynesiano, una cosa así. Basically it tells you how to dismantle Keynesianism with
yeah
libertarian ideas, and it's a great book, very technical, very. It has a lot of equations and it has a lot of diagrams and graphics
yeah
and tables, but I think it's one of his best books. And he has another one that is more commercial, that is called The Road of the Libertarian,
yeah
and it explains how he got into politics. That one is very good too. So those two books should definitely be translated to English. I
yeah
think those two books could be great to be
yeah.
translated.
We mentioned some of the economists. Who are some other influences he has? I mean, besides the Austrian school, is there anybody outside of? I know he's been influenced by The Market for Liberty by Morse and Linda Tannehill, but any other books in particular,
I don't know books, but I can tell you names.
or
I know
articles or name? Yeah, names, authors, yeah, writers, yeah,
he was very much influenced by the Spanish libertarians. That is Juan de Mariana, Jesús Huerta del Soto, Anso Bastos. Those
yeah.
three, I
So
can.
okay, Juan de Mariana, yeah, I know who that is. Who is the other ones?
Jesús Huerta de Soto. He's a professor
Jesus
in
Huerta
Spain.
de Soto, yeah, I know who that is.
And then the third one is Anso Bastos,
Anso
ANX.
Vatos.
Yeah, yeah. I can send you the name, but he's also a very good libertarian
Yeah.
communicator
How do you
and
spell that?
author. Oh,
S A.
I send it through the chat if you want to. If you want to, we can include it in the comments later. Yeah,
Oh yeah, Anso Bastos. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I'm still learning how to listen to this language, but yeah, Anso. Yeah, yeah, people have mentioned Bastos to me before. Yeah, it's yeah, I've heard. Yeah, there's been a lot of good people there. Yeah, there's definitely a tradition there. It's yeah, and not to mention if he's gonna. I mean, after 8 years of presidency, he's gonna be in demand so much to speak at conferences and stuff like that.
Well, he always jokes about when he ends his presidency, he wants to retire to a house in the middle of nowhere, and he wants to live with his dogs and write books,
Yeah.
and read and write books. But yeah, I think knowing
Oh,
him, he'll probably continue going to TV shows and continue giving conferences.
or
He's a very hyperactive person.
the Javier Milei School of Economics, or the
Yeah.
maybe the Austrian school. Years ago, Hans Sennholz said to me, he said, we're not going to take over America if we have the name Austrian on us. And maybe we can call it the Millet School of Economics, or the
Yeah.
he could start his own little organization and just have whoever come and just talk about economics for a week, have these little brainstorming sessions, and he'll certainly get speaking engagements and things like that. I mean, but if he wants to,
Yeah. That actually happened a lot
he's
with the
yeah
with the Chicago Boys, right?
yeah
So
yeah
Friedman sent a lot of
yeah
people to a lot of countries in the world,
oh
and
yeah
they established this school here in Argentina. We have the Chicago Boys. They're under the
yeah
USEMA, Universidad del SEMA, like SEMA
yeah.
University, it's called, and they are pretty much aligned 100% with the Chicago Boys.
Yeah, I wish I'd kept it. I actually got a letter from Milton Friedman once
Oh my
after
God.
after I wrote him. I never thought that much about it, but yeah, I kind of wish I had now. But it's this was back when people still did send mail, the
Yeah.
post office. It was
Yeah.
still but yeah, Milton Friedman did always come off as being a really nice guy. And he was a good speaker. The ability to put things in simple.
Yeah. Millet reminds me of him a lot in the way he
Yeah,
was able to communicate these complex ideas.
yeah. That's really yeah. Henry Hazlitt was that way too. I mean, I think because he was a columnist for the New York Times.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. But basically, here in Argentina, this is something I wanted to tell you.
yeah,
Thank you for reminding me. Millet is a very big fan of Henry Hazlitt. He even
yeah.
translated one of his books to Spanish.
Oh,
Economics in One Lesson, I think it's called.
yes,
Uh, and he made the prologue for the Spanish version of that book,
Yeah.
and he actually he sold that book on his conferences, and it was I got introduced into the libertarian part of economics a lot by that book, because I remember I bought it and I read it in like 2 days, and it's a great book, and it shows you, especially here in Argentina, how politicians tell you that they're spending their money on something, but the book tells you, well, there's a secondary effect to that, and be aware, because that spending can destroy another part of the
Yeah.
economy.
Not talking about Milei, but do you think what can you do? What can be done to make journalism more balanced, or do you think we're just always going to have journalists who are pursuing their own, as we call it, confirmation bias?
Yeah.
Uh,
um
as long as journalists are honest about the fact that they have an agenda, I guess that's not really a problem. But it seems like journalism and college professors are very much socialist, and I don't know how you can be one in this day and age after not seeing all when you can see all the misery that it's caused.
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. I this like my area of expertise, because I actually got a newspaper that is very political, and that's something very important. I am not. We do not hide what our preferences and from where we are writing. I very much hate those newspapers that say they're neutral, but once you start reading them, you realize they're very left leaning, or they're very right wing leaning. So I agree with that. I agree that journalism should, at least, so if you're not going to be neutral, say on what side you are. And then another big problem that I don't know if this applies to the US, but here in Argentina it's a big issue, is that the government gives money to the newspapers. So and they do
Yeah,
it legally. There's a law that's called
yeah,
Pauta Oficial, that they give money to the newspapers to promote the government, and the newspapers are mostly like 50% of their income is based on that money that the government gives them.
yeah,
And that really destroys what journalism is, because you cannot talk about the government if you are being paid, even if you're paid by the opposition. You cannot be a newspaper that only talks against the government because the opposition is paying you, right? So I think that is something that here in Argentina, at least, you could change it by changing that law, and that would do great things to the journalism sector or journalism market. But another thing is this that I was telling you. We should really be transparent on what the journalists think, because you cannot divide journalism from ideology. I think that is something that a lot of people in journalism tell you, that you need to strive for neutrality, but you can never be neutral, because even if you don't talk, or if you talk or you don't talk about a news, or something, or an article or something, you're being biased by that event, right? So if you say, I will not talk about political reform from Milei because I don't want to be talking about that, well, you're being biased against that, because you're choosing not to cover that, or you're choosing to cover it in a particular way. So I think that there's a big issue with that, and I think especially with social media, um,
yeah,
where any account, anyone can be a journalist. And usually when you scroll a little bit down, you immediately see what they think, and you don't care. So if you want to see something, if you want to know something about a particular thing that happened, you can go to one journalist that you know that will tell you one side of the story. You can go to the other one that will tell you the other side of the story. And I believe that everyone is intelligent enough to reconstruct that based on the biases of each journalist, and they can really get to the truth by doing that. And I think journalists today, they tell you, no, you can only get to the truth by reading something that was written by someone neutral. And I'm opposed to that. I think that if you go to one person that you know that he's a libertarian, then you go to one person that is right wing, and then you go to someone who is a progressive, and then you go to someone that is a left wing communist, and you see the same article written by those different persons, I think you can reach the truth through that.
yeah. It's I think the academics are probably even worse. Although that's where the journalists get it, is from the academics.
Yeah, that's true. That's
You know,
true.
it's interesting. I've been reading those. Karl Marx was about ready to go into obscurity before the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917, and I really almost see this as a type of capitalist version of the Bolshevik Revolution. I really think it could be that big.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
it's we're. I was saying before. I said this is the most important election in the history of the world. You know,
Well, let me tell you something. Here, our neighbors here in Chile, they had the only communist Bolshevik revolutionary who was elected by popular vote, and it was and, his name was called Salvador Allende, and he's cited by all Marxist authors as the only example of a communist revolutionary who was elected by popular vote. Well, now we have a libertarian revolutionary who was elected by popular vote here in Argentina. So
well,
that's a big change.
well, weren't you talking about Salvador Allende, or they had
Yes,
him?
Salvador Allende.
Yeah, he was.
Yes.
Yeah. There were. Yeah, and Chile had a military dictatorship, and Chile's still actually doing pretty well, and they've not really regressed, have they? I mean, there's been some
Well,
fear being.
that's a very good question. So they Pinochet, who was the military dictator who took out Allende, but this is a further discussion we can have. But
Yeah,
I think Allende did a coup before Pinochet. I think Chile was not having a democracy when Pinochet did
yeah,
the coup d'état. It was a coup against a coup, but that's a different topic. So when Pinochet got into power, he did a lot of economic reforms that really changed the country,
yeah,
and he did a constitution that it was I think it's a very good constitution that really limits it limits the power of the government. So even he was a dictator, an authoritarian dictator, he created a constitution that limits all the government powers, and that was respected even today. So after Pinochet got out of power, they had like four presidents who were socialist presidents, but they had little influence against the economy because the government had little powers against the economy, right? So they had a completely autonomous central bank. They had a completely autonomous judiciary power. They had a very little regulations, and if they wanted to create new regulations, it was so hard for them to create them that they never did. So Chile was a very a free market economy for a long time until a woman came that she's called Michelle Bachelet, that she was president, I think, two times, and she really did a lot of reforms that started going in the opposite way. She was the first one who started going in the opposite way. And recently, Gabriel Boric, who is the current president, he's an openly communist president, and he gained the presidency by saying that he wanted to reform the constitution, finally go against the constitution and reform it in a left-leaning way. But what happened was amazing. Like after they managed to get a referendum, like a popular vote on the new constitution, everyone voted against it. Even though they voted for him 1 year before, they voted against his constitution because when they read it, they realized how disruptive it was, how left leaning it was, how it was going to destroy the country. So, and even though they voted for him on that proposal, 1 year later they voted against the constitution. So right now they still have the Pinochet constitution, and they still have a very free market economy.
yeah. That's good. And from what I hear too, a lot of these protests that were like in Chile and some other places, they're possibly either funded by Maduro or by the Cuban communists. Isn't that right?
Yeah,
I mean, Castro
probably, yeah.
started stirring up doing this back in the '70s, and it's not really went away. Yeah,
I agree. I agree with that. And we had this in Colombia, we had this in Peru, we had this in Brazil. So a lot of countries, we call it estallido social, which is called like a social blowout. That is like from one day. From one day to another, a lot of people go into the street and you don't know where they're coming from, and they have a lot of flags of revolutionary flags that you didn't even know they existed, and they suddenly appear and they start protesting in the streets very violently, and after a week of protest, they completely disappear. And that is something that happened, as I told you, in Chile, Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, and all these countries then had a resurgence in left-leaning politics, right? So I think it was completely financed by Venezuela or Cuba, I don't know, or China, I don't know exactly from where, but it was not something that came out of the blue.
Yeah, yeah, we'll see. Well, yeah, no. Any other lessons that you think libertarians around the world can learn from the Milei campaign? We certainly learned that
Uh,
having a musician and having an athlete helps, and
yeah,
a guy
I
who
think
can,
you need to.
and
Yeah.
also having a girl having we didn't talk about Fatima Flores yet too. I think she's probably had an influence on his look.
Yeah,
Uh, you
yeah.
know, I haven't asked this, but uh, any chance he'll and it's harder to do this when you're president, obviously. But you think he might get married and have kids, or do you think he's going to stay a bachelor?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I am for
Yeah,
him to get married. I think it would be a great thing if he got married
yeah,
and had children. It would not be the first time. Our current
yeah,
president, he got a child while
yeah,
being president 2 years ago, and I think it's a very good thing to do as a president. It sets the example, and I'm
yeah,
completely for that. But for what you said earlier, I think my biggest suggestion or recommendation for libertarians is to first of all get a candidate that you know that they can speak and they can convey ideas, and you know that they have a strong influence, and they have a strong personality, and then that person needs to be humble, and they need to be true to themselves. So I see a lot of politicians that get into politics and they completely change how they are, and they have like a script, and they read that script even if it's right wing or left wing or libertarian. They read that script and they cannot go outside of that.
yeah,
I think Milei never did that. He even though I know personally people who were imploring him to stop talking of some subjects, like for example his firearm policy that is very
yeah,
libertarian. They were asking him to please stop talking about it because people were not going to vote him if he continued to talk about that, and he was completely against that, and he went into the television and talked even more about it. So I think that way of doing politics is very new. I don't know if it's going to be as effective as it was with Millet in any other
yeah.
cases, but I think that's the way forward.
I'm here in Austin, Texas, and it also happens to be the home. I don't know if it's still the hometown of a guy named Cody Wilson, and he actually started ways to make guns using 3D printers, and sometimes people here say print guns, not money.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
the whole guns thing. I mean, I think it's the one thing that's probably kept America from becoming a dictatorship. I mean,
yeah,
the fact that there are probably 500 or 600 million guns in this country that and just you know I was watching this video from some guy in Britain who was basically he was looking inside a government agent. He was looking inside a guy's window. You would never, any government agent would be afraid to do that in America, to look in somebody's window, because it's like, I better
y-
not trespass, I might get shot, that kind of thing.
yeah, yeah. We don't have
And
that.
not that we
Yeah,
advocate shooting government agents, but
yeah. I know. I
it's
understand.
you
Yeah,
look at every genocide every has happened, when people didn't have access to weapons. It's or
yeah. Here actually, yeah, this is a good chance to explain this. Here in Argentina, we had a lot of firearms in the country where I think other than the US in America we were the second country with most firearms. But after the military dictatorships, they realized that the only way to, because this is something I need to explain, because the first military dictatorships, they had a lot of approval from the public, right? So it was not something that came out of the blue. So a lot of people in the first military dictatorship we had was in 1930, and a lot of people were celebrating in the streets. Our economy was completely destroyed by Irigoyen, was president back then, and people were cheering in the streets, and they pretty much So it was not it was not something that the people could have prevented, because most people back then wanted the dictatorship, right? But after many years of dictatorship, people started opposing it, and they started using those firearms to combat it. And that's when the military dictatorship started passing laws against gun ownership. So the biggest laws we have in the country against gun ownership were passed by our military dictators. And the problem is that they were never revoked by the democracy, right? When we recover
Yeah,
our democracy, they were not revoked.
yeah. It's amazing how some of these bad laws get passed and some of these bad laws hang around. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
when I had a guy and we are talking about the Dutch farmer protests, and he told me that there are some regulations on the books there that were passed when Germany was occupying the Netherlands. I'm
Oh
like,
my God. And they're
what?
still
You
there.
still there's still laws? I mean, why didn't you just throw out all these laws once the Germans left? I mean, it's just it's
Yeah.
so funny, but uh, yeah. So that's well, that's looks like it's going to be very interesting. Yeah, I certainly a lot's going to happen. I mean, I'm I've been giving this so much attention because I have a lot more confidence in South America, I think, than I do in the USA right now.
Yeah.
And yet, also, Bitcoin and cryptocurrency people are also very optimistic about Milei. I mean, it looks like he's going to be a pro Bitcoin president. The guy from Monero, the guy who runs Monerotopia, said, maybe we'll see if we can have Monerotopia in Buenos Aires, and the Latin American Bitcoin conference and things like that. It sounds like it could be a really good
Well,
thing.
yeah, no. Milei is very pro Bitcoin, very pro Bitcoin. There's a big community of cryptocurrency here in Argentina. I think it's one of the biggest ones in the world. And Milei, he even promoted one of those many crypto companies that many are a scam, maybe not, I don't know. But
I mean,
he was very much promoting all those, and he promotes a lot of economic
yeah,
liberation through Bitcoin, and a way to escape the country's many regulations that we have
yeah.
on our money.
We were wondering about that too. Yeah, and yeah, uh, the scam. We had a little talk about that, whether or not, and maybe it was just but you got to be careful. You got to investigate those things also. And
Yeah.
also apparently Milei used to work for this guy whose parents were from Armenia. Is that right?
Well, yeah. Most of his career, he worked for a big businessman here in Argentina. He was his economic, he was part of the economic team. He was in the private sector, right? He was like a
Yeah,
financial analyst for this company that is called Grupo America, and the guy was called Ernequian. So yeah, he's a big Armenian guy here in Argentina.
yeah,
He's a little bit on the how you call it, like he's a big lobbyist here in Argentina also. He's like the big too big to fail, those kind
yeah,
of businessmen. But yeah, he employed a lot of people, and he gave voice to a lot of people who were libertarians. He
yeah,
has media, he has airline companies, he has everything. He's a big businessman here in Argentina, and Milei was like a financial analyst on that company before he got into
yeah.
politics.
Because some of us have kind of been wondering, who might be funding Milei. I don't know if he's getting
No,
funding from.
no, no, no. Arnequian actually he was funding the other one, the Sergio Massa. No, he was certainly not funding Milei. No, Milei had well here in Argentina. First of all, we got funding from the government, right? So there's a law that
Yeah,
prevents big donations. It's
yeah,
completely in reverse from the United States. We have a law that prevents donations, so all the money is supposed to come from the government. But then, as it was so little money, there was another law that went through that allowed you to get small donations. So now there's a lot so
yeah,
this is something that you might not believe, but when a candidate run a campaign, he runs the official campaign, and then there are other businessmen that run parallel campaigns to him, but without talking with him, because if he talks with them, he can go to jail, right? So it's like he cannot donate to the candidate, but he can run a parallel campaign without the other one knowing. So that's something that happened a lot here in Argentina. But also Milei, he spent so little money on this campaign. It was like it's not even like 10% on what the other candidates spent. It was like this is the cheapest campaign ever in, I think, in history, for the amount of votes he got.
Yeah.
It was, for example, in social media, and I know the person who was in charge of social media for Milei, and I can assure you they spent 0 pesos, 0 pesos on social media. They did not promote a single tweet, they did not promote a single video, nothing. It was all done organically with people that were activists, with influencers and all that.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, the one guy I was asking about was Eduardo Ernequian or something like that. Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
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 yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. He also apparently owns the big airport in Armenia too. So that's interesting. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a
Yeah.
lot of really interesting people. We're learning a lot of interesting things here. I
Argentina is
ah
a very, it's a very interesting country.
yeah,
We have a lot of, it's amazing because we're very socialist in many ways, but we
yeah,
also have the most free market
yeah,
figures in the world. We even have our biggest company in Argentina is called Mercado Libre, which
yeah,
translate to free market. Word for
yeah,
word, it translates to free market, and it's like an Amazon, PayPal
yeah,
company, and it's the biggest one in Argentina,
yeah.
and the owner is very much a libertarian in every sense of the word, and so yeah, it's a very interesting country. I'm glad that a lot of people are getting to know us.
Well, people also tell me, take great Italian food and take great Texas barbecue. You have Argentine food. I said, okay, that's good.
Yeah, yeah, exactly,
And I
exactly.
also, where should I visit when I come down there? I mean, I Buenos Aires, I gotta go down. I gotta go down south and visit the penguins. That's another thing.
Yeah,
You
well, we
know,
have
go down like to Ushuaia or something like that. Yeah,
Ushuaia. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Go way down south and visit the penguins and maybe Iguazu Falls. But yeah,
Yeah, we have everything. We have everything in Argentina. We have
yeah.
ice, we have deserts, we
Oh
have
yeah,
tropical, we have everything. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And I think also doesn't Argentina have a fairly good network of railroads from what I hear, and there aren't a lot of railroads in South America.
Yeah, it's really interesting because those railroads were funded a long time ago by the UK, by English
Yeah,
investors, and then we completely went against UK, right,
yeah,
for territorial disputes.
yeah,
But they funded one of the biggest railroads programs in the world. Yeah.
yeah. And one thing I've mentioned too, and I still think this is true. There is no car company that's based in South America. I mean, yeah, you have other foreign car companies there, but no car company that's actually South American based. Like that'd be really cool if you had one down there. But yeah,
Oh,
okay, yeah,
I was not aware of that, but yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, you're
I
right.
don't know of
Yeah.
any, but yeah, is there anything else you want to say before we go?
No, thank you for your invitation. I
Yeah,
will definitely join again in the future. Let's
yeah.
talk again
I'd
after
love to
the
talk to you. Yeah,
inauguration, maybe
yeah.
maybe after 1 or 2 months of government, and we can talk about the first policies
I
he's going to make.
I I appreciate the talk. I have a rule that I don't bring anybody back for 50 shows. So
Okay, no
it keeps
problem,
me
no
out of an
problem.
echo chamber, and it just keeps things fresh and variety. But
Yeah,
there's
of course.
there's so many good people to talk to, and everybody loves to talk about this. So
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, I loved having you on here, Juan. Thank you very much. And we should check you out where.
Yeah, so I will recommend everyone to read our newspaper in Argentina. Of course, it's in
Yeah,
Spanish, but you can use translator. We use it a
yeah,
lot of the times to read your side of the
yeah.
news. So you can use the translator to read us. We are derechadiario.com.ar. That's
Yes.
derechadiario.com.ar. So I
Yeah.
will probably leave it in the comments too, but you can find us there.
Yeah, please like and subscribe. Follow my channel, give it a thumbs up, and go buy my novel Escape from the Village. Check out my Substack. I'm Chris Baker. Thank you, Juan Doe. We're Juan Doe. We are out. Yeah.